Hi, this is Joe from JRX and welcome to the update video for the JRX Bell 407 2026 version. Point to note for this is that the old JRX Bell 407 videos for Explain 11 and 12, which are on the JRX Design Forum, are still valid. This video is just about the changes that I have made for the update to 2026. This is a big update for this version from 2023 to 2026. I'm not going to read through the list out loud on a video. I'm just going to highlight the major changes and you can take a look at the list at your leisure. Let's just do some housekeeping before we begin properly. If you are an existing customer, then this is a free update, and for new customers this will be a download from the Explain.org store. This will come in the form of a compressed zip file. All you need to do is extract this and install it into your Explain 12 aircrafts folder. During this process, if you already have the JRX Bell 407, please completely remove it and do not merge folders, as this can cause problems. Once that's complete, you can load up the sim and begin. Now that we're in the sim, we just need to confirm that our controllers are set up correctly. For this aircraft, we need to have the following axes or buttons assigned, and they are pitch, roll, yaw, throttle and collective. I would say that the minimum axis required would be 3. For pitch, roll and yaw, the throttle and the collective can be assigned to any other input device if you do not have spare axes. Let's speak about control sensitivity. This option can be found under the joystick heading, and if you have any issues controlling this aircraft, you can control the sensitivity of your input devices. For me, and during testing, I have had all of mine over to the left. Likewise, with your input controller, you can edit and make custom response curves. This is entirely down to you how you would like to have these set up. But again, for me, I've had everything linear and it handles without problem. Whilst we're in this section, you might want to take a look at the JRX custom commands that have been made for this aircraft, and there are a lot. You will find them under the keyboard section, heading 407, and then we have subsections, engine, menu, switches and controls, another sub, camera and trim. We'll take a look at that later. If you fly in VR and you suffer like I do with dark cockpits, I've added a command called toggle VR gamma. This will raise the brightness level just enough to make the cockpit not look overly dark. Just a reminder that these commands can also be assigned to any valid Explain input device that you have, and you can do that through the joystick section. You'll choose your input device, you'll find your axis or button and you'll click add, and then you can go through the list of commands that you want to add to that specific device. For any trim input, please do not use the default Explain ones. I have written a custom set of JRX trim commands that you should use, and we will talk about these later on in the video, how to set them up and how to use them. And finally, in this section, let's come over to the general tab and have a look at flight model and flight models per frames. Some of the testers did report that the aircraft was jumpy or unstable on the ground, and at certain times it had a crash on the ground without any input. I've looked greatly through the code and through the settings in PlaneMaker, and I cannot find anything that's potentially causing this. The only thing that I found personally is that my flight models per frame have been lowered to anywhere between 4, 5 and 6, and the aircraft is very stable. This will depend individually on your type of system. If you experience any jumpiness on the ground, random ground crashes, this is the first place that you need to come and check. And if you're on 2, 3 or 4, then you may have to potentially lower it. Should you have any support requests or you want to contact me, then I'm only active on 2 platforms. One is the Explain.org forum under JRX Design, and the other is my YouTube channel. That's your first port of call to contact me relating to anything JRX. So that's all the housekeeping complete. Without further ado, let's jump into the cockpit and look at the changes that we've made. After first load, the aircraft will be similar to the state that we see it now. Remember, we do have a persistence file that will save most of your settings on load, because this is the first time it's fallen back to the default persistence settings. And remember that we can change these in the aircraft configuration tablet. Also note that for the purposes of the video, I have changed the default field of view to around 100 degrees so we can see more on the screen. Let's take the headsets out of view for the video and close the door. The panel and pedestal layout was changed because we've added the X-Plane WXR module, which is here. The GPS will be above this and the radios will be on the lower pedestal. The issue that we see here is that these will be difficult to manipulate, so I've added a command button at the base of the collective to hide it, thus giving us full access to the radio panels. The collective will still fully function in its hidden state, and we just need to click there to restore that. All of the flight controls have been retextured and remeshed, giving them a much clearer, cleaner, more accurate view. The seats and the seat harnesses have been retextured and remeshed alongside with the floor and the anti-torque pedals. I've also done some work on both the panels. We have the NVG panel and the standard panel. These have been retextures along with the Lytton IES instruments. These have also been cleaned up, and lots of other minor visual tweaks inside the cabin. I've turned on the battery and we can take a look at the configuration tablet, which is changed to a tablet proper. Menu 1, Menu 2, the livery section, AviTab and the GPS page, which I'll show you later. The aircraft configuration has not changed too much. Some new options have been added. We have crew helmets. Let's ensure the co-pilot's on. We have crew helmets. And we have crew helmets with NVG if we choose that. Both the pilot and the co-pilot will have NVG glasses attached to their helmet. If we shift N to turn on the NVG or the night vision, the glasses will go to the down position for both the pilot and co-pilot. You also note that I've added custom pilot and co-pilot head movements into the mix. Let's turn that off. If we choose toggle sunglasses, let's go to view sunglasses. The screen will go slightly darker, but the pilot and co-pilot will also be wearing sunglasses to match that. Other notable additions are the addition of the TDS GTNXI 750, again optional, selected via the tablet. If we click that, we then switch over to the larger display that the 750 has. If you still own the RXP GTN, that is also available there. You won't see a physical change, but these use a different command structure and they will change around the side accordingly. If you don't have anything, the default GNS 530 is available as standard, and I have changed the outer bezel to the correct one. I've updated the autopilot unit both internally and externally. Let's take a look at that. You'll note to the right hand side we have a window. We've added some autopilot flight information, and it now allows us to pre-select and capture an altitude in conjunction with the vertical speed button. The clickable window will toggle between a trim gauge where you can see the location of your controls and back to the autopilot information. I've swapped the mode inside PlaneMaker to Heli DAFCS, that's Digital Automatic Flight Control System, and it's working very well with this model. For the engine exceedances, I have expanded the data capture. That information comes from the Lytton IES engine information systems, and the torque, MGT and NG gauge, if exceeded, will store a value which can be looked at and reset by grounds personnel. For the sim, that information is captured here and it can be reset with the battery on whilst on the ground. If you want to reset these values, you will have to go to the JRX commands and assign a command for those. For the trim rate control, and I will be doing a little subsection on trim in this video, we have the option to change the strength, in that how fast or how slow it changes. Each time you change the trim rate strength, you'll get a reminder tone of what mode you're currently in. Finally, for menu options, page 1, we have flight model assistance. This is highly experimental. The default flight model mode for this aircraft is 0, and you can cycle through each mode. This will change how the aircraft handles, not so much in straight and level flight, but around the hover and slower flight regimes. You can try these at your leisure. Another way to change this is on the autopilot unit. If we come down here, we can cycle through the modes by hitting the SAS button. Mode 0 is default, 1, 2, 3, off, and then back to the default 0 flight model. I'd like some feedback on these if you would, because they are very configurable and eventually we can get them tuned in to 3 or 4 good levels. Menu option page 2 is effectively a mirror of the X-plane weight and balance menu. We have the default fuel loading, full down to 1/4 tank. We have a live update of weights. These include any options that you may choose on page 1. They will update in real time. The fuel weight will change in real time as it's swapped or burnt off. And we can also trim the payload weight. We have a set 0 here, and we can adjust the weight here accordingly, and you'll get a readout of the all-up weights in pound and kilogram at the bottom. We have a reset options button that will effectively clear down most of this screen here. We have a set cold and dark. It will take about 30 seconds after your flight if you want to set everything to off. There's a command that will do that. The vibrations are still here. I feel we need to work a little bit more on these. 3 different strengths and a button so we can change the field of view. Each click is 5-degree change. Let's leave that on 100. We have the liveries section. I'm making liveries and taking livery requests all the time, and these can be added as and when they are asked for. You can change liveries here, or you can do it through the standard menu. We have the AviTab, the great freeware module that you can download courtesy of the org forum. Don't worry too much about my FPS. I'm running everything at maximum for the purposes of the video. It's normally around 90 to 100 on my default settings, and we still have the enhanced flight information at the bottom of the AviTab screen. If we click the satellite button, we have a direct mirror of our chosen GPS option. This is the TDS GTNXI. But if you were to choose the default, that will be there also. Inside the cockpit side pockets, we have some folders and the map. If we click the map, we will get the X-plane sectional map display. I've added flight reference cards, and they are in this red book here. This click spot, regardless of whether the doors are open or off, will always be just to the right of the pilot's seat. and we have all the information that you need to get the aircraft up and running, flying and shut down. Let's remind ourselves about starting up and shutting down, but before we do that, I want to speak about what is not working and probably will not be working or added. So the following do not work. We can go to the menu option, flight, start engines to running has been removed in this model along with Shift Control plus E. The other option to start the aircraft from the configuration menu here, start engines running, that does not work, so I highly recommend that you do not try either of those two options. But let's speak about what does work, and the only way to start this aircraft is manually. It's very simple. I'm going to give you a demonstration. I'm going to do this outside of the checklist for time saving purposes, and it will also demonstrate how easy and simple the start and shutdown procedure is in this aircraft. For the startup outside of the checklist, I've already turned on the battery, so we can skip the built-in test. We need to go to the overhead panel and check the following. Left boost on. I like to put the force trim on and the hydraulic, and good practice to have the anti-collision lights on during the start. We then come down to the throttle, and either with your controller or the mouse, we're going to roll the throttle to idle until the idle release pops. There. All we need to do now is press and hold the start button for 1 second and release, and then monitor the instrumentation. And that is the simplified way of starting the engine in the JRX Bell 407. You would then of course come back to your overhead panel and set all switches and settings for your flight. Let's just assume that they're done for this demonstration. We'll bring the throttle up to fly. Remember, in this aircraft, the fly mark is the furthest that this throttle will go. The rest is for maintenance and manual flying. We're at fly, we've completed our flight, and we're now going to go through the shutdown process. Let's take a look outside. Our flight is complete, and I will now go through the shutdown tutorial, the truncated quick way. All we need to do is to roll the throttle back to the idle line and stop. There. Cancel the RPM warning alarm. We'll let the engine come back to idle. We'll assume that everything is switched off and we're ready to shut down. We just need to come to the throttle, click the idle release once, and then roll the throttle to the off position. Cancel the alarm. And that is the truncated startup and shutdown tutorial for this version of the JRX Bell 407. Before we go airborne, let's take a look at setting up the trim and assigning some buttons to controllers. Let me check mine. If you know how to do this, you can skip this part. We need to go to settings, joystick, and I have a controller here and they all look assigned. Trim roll left, up, down, right. Trim rate selection, release trim, and force trim. Remember, you can assign these buttons to any device. Let's have a look at them grouped together. JRX trim. They are here: release, force, trim in all directions, your trim left and right, and trim rate selection, and the force trim tones toggle. I'll show you that shortly. For the force trim to work, we need to have it switched on the overhead panel. That beep is reminding us that we are in mode 1. Mode 1 will move as follows. Quite quickly, let's just pull up the tablet and have a look. Trim strength 1, 2, quicker, 3, and 4. So that's how the trim rate control strength will correspond to the physical movement of the controller. I've added some trim offset forward and left with the pedals to the left. I'm now going to demonstrate pressing the trim center button. The trim will move back towards its center of axis, and if you release it will stop, like so. Gradual move back to the center. Heli trim system works in this aircraft. If you've got the JRX MD902, it's the same as that, or the EC135. That also has this, primarily aimed towards pilots with short sprung controllers, in that when you're in the cruise, let's just exaggerate this, you're straight and level here where the red dot is, you're pushing forward and to the left your controller, and for a long period of time that will become uncomfortable. What we need to do is to force that red dot to stay there and release the tension or pressure on your cyclic back to a comfortable position. For this demonstration, I'm going to press and hold the force trim button. I'm going to release the pressure and tension on my physical hardware controller back to a neutral spot, but you'll note that the red dot in the display will stay where it is. You'll hear a tone whilst that happens, which you can of course turn off. My hardware controller is now a neutral position, but I can still control the aircraft cyclic with it being forced forward and to the left. And of course you can reset this by pressing the center trim button, and back it comes. Here we are climbing up to our cruising altitude of 6,000 feet, and I'm just going to highlight some of the main points of the update whilst we're in the air. Okay, I've done some work on the rotor animations and the rotor coning. We can take a look at them outside. I'm not sure how they're going to capture on the video, they're quite difficult to record. Also done some work on the Doppler effect. I've also been working on some new liveries. These are customer requests. I've also updated the exterior lighting. I've done some work on the pulse lights to get the timing correct. Whilst we have the lights down, I've updated the internal cabin light. Use a double click. Click once for white, once for red, and again for off. If we come to the overhead panel, we have the cabin and passenger lights. These have also been updated. As we mentioned before, we now have as standard the X-Plane WXR weather radar model. This is from X-Plane 12.3. This is now standard in this aircraft. I've done a lot of work on the flight model and airfoils. You should find this a more forgiving aircraft to fly with this version. The flight model tuning was conducted at 6,000 feet, which is where we're at now, and 120 knots, and starting the flight with a maximum all-up weight. We're currently at 5,145 pounds. And with this, it allowed me to tune the fuel. We're looking for around about 45 US gallons per hour. We can check this on the TDS under fuel planning. There we go. We're currently at 44.3 gallons per hour, which is well within our targeted range. So there we have it. This is the update video for the JRX Bell 407 2026 version. I think we can stop here. I've demonstrated most of the major points that I wanted to show for the update. You can look through the entire update list to see exactly what's changed. Remember, you can get help and support at the JRX forums or on my YouTube channel. But until then, and the next update or aircraft from JRX, this is Joe. Have a good day and goodbye.